is 1911. New York City is a symphony of ambition, a towering metropolis of steel and stone, humming with the noise of progress. Millions flock to its shores, chasing a promise whispered across oceans. The American dream. But on a quiet Saturday afternoon, March 25th, that dream would turn into a nightmare, consumed by fire and smoke. This is the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, a tragedy that burned its way into the nation's conscience. It's a story of young lives cut short, of unimaginable choices, and of a system that valued profit over people. Our story begins in the Ash Building, a modern, supposedly fireproof structure just a block from Washington Square Park. On the top 3 floors, the 8th, 9th, and 10th was the Triangle Shirtwaist Company, one of the city's largest manufacturers of women's blouses or shirtwaists. Inside, nearly 500 workers, mostly young immigrant women and girls from Italy and Eastern Europe, hunched over their sewing machines. Some were as young as 14. They worked long hours for little pay, surrounded by mountains of flammable fabric scraps that piled up on the floor. It was almost closing time. The bell was about to ring, signaling the end of another grueling 6-day week. The girls were looking forward to a day of rest, a moment to breathe. They dreamt of small joys, a walk in the park, a new hat, a letter from home. They were just teenagers, full of life, their futures stretching out before them like the endless rows of fabric they sewed. Then a flicker. On the 8th floor, a stray spark, maybe from a cigarette or a faulty machine, ignited a pile of cotton scraps. In an instant, a small flame grew into an inferno. The flimsy fabric, the wooden tables, the oil-soaked floors, it all went up. A manager tried to douse the flames with a bucket of water, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a teacup. The fire exploded, feeding on the very air the workers breathed. Panic erupted. Screams replaced the rhythmic hum of sewing machines. Workers on the 8th floor scrambled for the exits. Some made it down the freight elevators before the flames took hold. Others fled to the Green Street stairway and escaped. But for many, it was already too late. The fire, with terrifying speed, raced upwards to the 9th floor. Here, the tragedy took its most sinister turn. As the girls rushed towards the Washington Place stairway, they slammed into a wall of iron. The door was locked. The factory owners, Max Blank and Isaac Harris, had ordered the doors locked during work hours. Why? To prevent the workers from taking unauthorized breaks and to stop them from stealing scraps of lace and fabric. A measure to protect profits had just become a death sentence. The scene descended into chaos. The narrow fire escape, already overloaded, buckled under the weight of desperate people, sending dozens plunging to their deaths. The single functioning passenger elevator made heroic trips up and down, piloted by Joseph Zito, who packed as many people as he could into his car until the heat warped the tracks. He saw girls clawing at the doors, their faces etched with terror, before being swallowed by the smoke. On the 10th floor, the owners themselves were alerted by phone. They led their staff to the roof, where they crossed over to an adjacent building and to safety. They saved themselves, but below them, on the 9th floor, their workers were trapped in a blazing tomb. But their ladders were useless. They only reached the 6th floor, 2 stories below the inferno. A life net was unfurled, but the force of bodies jumping from such a height tore it apart. The crowd below watched in stunned silence, their cheers of encouragement turning into gasps of horror. Trapped between the fire at their backs and a 100-foot drop below, the girls on the 9th floor window ledges faced an impossible choice. Some held hands, some kissed for the last time, and then, one by one, they jumped. They appeared as tiny specks against the sky, their dresses fluttering before they hit the pavement. For a moment, it was said the sound of bodies hitting the ground was the only sound on the street. In just 80 minutes, it was over. The fire had consumed everything. The factory was a charred skeleton. The streets below were a scene of unspeakable devastation. 146 people were dead. 49 had burned to death or suffocated. 36 died in the elevator shaft. 58 died from jumping. Their dreams, their futures, their very identities were extinguished. They were daughters, sisters, and friends. And now they were gone. In the aftermath, grief turned to outrage. The city wept. A silent funeral march of over 100,000 people filled the streets of Manhattan. a river of sorrow flowing through the city. The locked doors became a symbol of corporate greed and gross negligence. The factory owners, Blank and Harris, were tried for manslaughter but were acquitted. The jury found that while the door was locked, the prosecution couldn't prove the owners knew it was locked at that specific moment. They later paid a settlement to the victims' families, $75 per life loss. But the story doesn't end there. From the ashes of this tragedy, a movement was born. The fire galvanized the fight for workers' rights. Union organizers, activists, and politicians, horrified by the senseless loss of life, demanded change. A committee was formed, led by figures like Frances Perkins, who witnessed the fire firsthand and would later become the first female Secretary of Labor. This investigation led to a wave of new legislation. Laws were passed mandating fire sprinklers, unlocked exit doors that swung outwards, and better fire escape access. Workplace safety was no longer a suggestion. It became the law. These reforms, born from the fire, laid the foundation for the occupational safety standards we take for granted today. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire is a dark chapter in American history, but it is also a story of resilience and reform. It reminds us that progress is often paid for in human lives. The 146 souls who perished on that March afternoon did not die in vain. Their sacrifice forced a nation to look in the mirror and confront the brutal reality of its industrial age. They changed America forever, ensuring that no worker would ever again have to choose between a fire and a locked door. Their memory is not just a story of tragedy, but a testament to the enduring fight for human dignity. Thank you for watching.